One project I've been thinking about and planning on and drawing out for a long time now is a small strip sander. A common size is a 1" by 30" piece of sandpaper, and I got the idea after watching Matthias's video. He made his own, and I've been hoping he was going to make one because his is pretty complicated. It has 2 rollerblade wheels in front, the motor in the back, lots of adjustments. I didn't want that. I wanted something simple and strong, and Harbor Freight also sells one. And for 3 reasons I didn't buy the Harbor Freight one. One, it was $50. If it's $20, fine. I have some cheap Harbor Freight tools that I use once a year, and they're fine. The second reason, it didn't seem like it was built well. It was plasticky and wobbly. And third, if it's a tool I know I'm going to use and use a lot, I'm not going to go with that. Harbor Freight's kind of, for me, is something I'll use once in a while, or surprisingly it might be good, and I'll upgrade and buy a nice one. But I just didn't trust their sanders. So I wanted to make something simple and compact and lightweight I could keep under my workbench because I don't have a lot of space. I don't have a spot that I can set up a big sander. I wanted to set it underneath the bench, pull it out, and use it. And I think, other than the sandpaper, I'm pretty sure I can make it for nothing. But you have to have the motor, and I have a bunch of motors over there, and I decided on one. This is not the motor I came up with. This is, I think, it's a large, it says Westinghouse. I think it's not a furnace motor, but it's almost that size. It's big. I could have used it. It had plenty of torque, but I think this was overkill. Another motor I had, I think this is from a fan or a ceiling fan or a box fan. I could have used this one. This would have been fine. It's nice and quiet, well balanced. Not a lot of mounting surfaces, but I ended up going with this one. Now this has a plastic shroud, and I had 2 of these. One I have mounted on here, and I'll show you what I have mocked up. But it has a plastic fitting. This was from like a cheap Walmart box fan. The blades broke off on both of them, or they were hand-me-downs, or someone was going to throw them out, and I got 2 of them. And the motor's only this part in the center. And I took it off to mount it, and it's borderline too small. But I've tested it, and it might bog down a little, but I think it'll work. So let me show you what I have mocked up. It's just clamped up to see if this motor will work, but let me show you what I did. So this is what I came up with. It's small, it's compact. I only used 2 wheels, one on the driving motor, and this is the same motor I just showed you out of the small cheap box fan. The top is a rollerblade wheel. I still have to round it over some more and shape it, and you know, everything's, right now it's all just clamped together. But it's small, lightweight, it's basically free. The only thing I bought was this sandpaper. I bought a 5-pack for $3. So let me show you why I think it should be okay. I have to use my finger right now as a tracking mechanism, but I think it's going to be fine. It's got enough torque, it's going fast enough. It probably will bog down, but for just doing small rounding over, it works perfectly. It's got 3 speeds. I'll probably use it on high all the time, and you can see if I let go, it'll fall off because you need some sort of tracking mechanism, and right now I'm just using my finger here. But I'll put a bolt, and I have plans all drawn up, and I'll give them to you in all the dimensions, and I'm still have to build it. Like I said, right now this is just a mock-up. I have it all just, you know, clamped together just to see that this motor would work, and I think it'll be okay. So I'm going to improve it and make it smaller and lighter, and I'm going to use a spring on the back to provide constant tension, just a small spring, and I'll bolt it together. I'll have a table and a metal platen to provide the force, but I'm pretty excited about how this is turning out so far, and I think it'll work. And for basically nothing, just the sandpaper, we'll be able to get it, and it should be better than the Harbor Freight, and it'll just be simple and easy. I won't have any adjustments. It'll just be something I can put under my workbench, lift up, and it'll be good to go. So let me show you how I build the rest of it. Like I said, this is the only thing I've really built so far. I cut this wheel out and I just press fit it on there. I think I could just pull it out. I put a little bit of a convex shape to it. Not really. It's been tracking fine. It's just a press fit. I'll probably put a pin to hold it on there. This motor had 4 nice little mounting brackets, and I had to cut a piece out that would fit around here, but that's how I'm going to mount it to the board. So that's all I have right now. I had to notch it out on the table saw, but this will have to be, whatever motor you use, you'll have to find a way to mount it to the base. So there's no real reason for me to show you how to do it for this motor, because it's going to change for whatever motor you use. But just make sure when you mount the wheel, and the wheel can be any size, but make sure that it's up off the base so your sandpaper doesn't hit. But let me show you how I did the rest of it. So what I'm going to start with is that swing arm, that hinge swing arm. And for the mock-up, I just used a piece of board, but I need a counterbalance, something that's going to longer and bigger. And I drew up all these different designs, and I think I'm going to use something like this, where I'm going to have to draw it on a larger board, but it'll have a cantilever type point on it where it'll provide more force than just a small little board like this, because I'm going to drill the hole out here, and I need something further out and further down that'll provide force of that spring to provide constant tension. So I'm going to make that first. Well, I said I was going to start on this piece, and I wanted it to look like this picture that I drew. After looking at the board, though, I kind of made it fit and made it as strong as possible, but it's still way too thick, so I'm going to rip it in half, then I'll cut this out on the bandsaw. Okay, well, here's where I'm at so far. I cut this piece, and I realized this section is much too long. I originally drilled it, but for this to align with this, because they're basically the same size, the hole's going to have to be here. I used a straight edge to just draw from the center of that wheel up to there, and that's where I got this line. So that's where I'm going to make the new center, drill the hole, and it'll be mounted. This spring will mount here, and that'll provide the tension. Alright, I have it mocked up again to try to get a few dimensions. Like I said, I cut the top, so now I know the surface of this the work table, so I can mark this one. This will go here too. And I'm just trying to get the placement on this base. So here it is running. I got to apply some tension. And it seems to be running fine. I was going to trim the top wheel down, but it seems to be doing okay. So I think I'm going to... It's working fine. I like the placement, so I'm going to glue it and screw it to the bottom there. Glue it and screw it to the bottom base plate. And then from there I can attach the table and then work on the platen, I'm not sure the name of it, and I'm going to use this piece of aluminum, and that'll go behind here. Somehow I'll have to make a right angle and it'll attach to the table. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work, but first I want to get it set so I don't have to be clamping it up everywhere. Okay, I got everything marked where it should be. I drilled 2 holes in each one, and on the bottom I countersunk them, and I actually ripped it to the right size so it's not as bigger than it needs to be. I just realized I did not pre-drilled the base, but I haven't pre-drilled this board here, so I might have to put one screw halfway in, then drill them all. We'll see. I don't want to split this board. This is going to be fun. Yep. I'm going to put one screw in each end, and then I'm going to come back and pre-drill it so I don't split it. Alright, so this might be a little boring, but I've been having a little trouble mounting this platen onto the frame. Here's what I'm going to use. I'm going to cut out a small section of this aluminum, and It's going to make the right angle. I think I might use rivets, but I don't really have any big surfaces to mount it to, so I'm going to have to use a small piece of wood block to fill in this gap, this notch that I made to fit on the motor. It'll come off of there, make a right angle, and be behind this sandpaper, so we'll see how it turns out. Alright, well, I was originally going to have this platen mounted above the motor, and I realized that I have a nice solid face here that I can mount it to, so I don't have to make a special flat spot here where I have it cut out. I can have this face here, so I bent a piece of aluminum. That's going to fit behind here, and that'll fit behind the sandpaper, and then I'll have another piece that mounts vertically for the platen behind it. I drilled 4 holes in this one, and I'm going to drill 4 holes in the other piece and use rivets to hold them together. But they were a little too long, and I'm going to tap them down on the anvil here. One thing I have learned is you don't want to just smash them. These are the aluminum ones. I've smashed them too hard and it actually pulled through, so you just want to tap them and round them over a little. Alright, I just finished attaching the platen, and I like how it turned out. I only needed 1 bolt. I was originally thinking 2 bolts through the side, but I have 1 bolt. It's resting on the motor. It's tight to this board, and I took some pictures up close, but 1 bolt's plenty. I have a thumb tightening screw and a lock washer. It's not going anywhere, so I think 1 bolt is fine. I did drill a wide hole through this plate so I can adjust in and out and twist it up and down and get the angle, but 1 bolt's been fine. Well, I attempted to cut the wheel on the bandsaw, kind of like how I saw Matthias do it on his table saw, and it didn't turn out so great for me. First, it started to melt the plastic, not really cut it, and that kind of gummed the blade up, and it didn't cut. The bandsaw kind of bowed a little, so it's not a perfect circle. I thought I could just set it on there and turn it and have it cut. It didn't turn out that great. I could probably fix it, but I think I'm just going to stick with the wheel I have now, even if it's curved a little more than I'd like. If that doesn't work, or that screws all the sandpaper up and starts to bow it, maybe I'll look more into this wheel, but trying to cut a circular wheel on the bandsaw like I did, it didn't turn out for me with this plastic. For wood, I'm sure it would have been fine, but not with this. Well, I just got done cutting this circle, this rollerblade wheel, trying to cut it circular on the bandsaw, and it didn't really work at all. It cut it, but it kind of melted this rubber, and it gummed it all up, and it gummed the blade up, and it didn't really work at all. The blade kept bowing when I tried to cut it. Matthias did it on the table saw, and that might be the way to go. It got a rough shape, but it wasn't great. So I've been experimenting with the disc sander, and that is helping. It's still kind of melting it. It's not really sanding it. It's kind of melting it away, but I am getting a more circular shape. So I'm going to try to clean it up. I'll test it out on the sander. If it doesn't work, I can always use the other wheel. But if this works, it's much flatter, and I'll just round over the edges a little bit on the sander. But if this doesn't work, I can always use the other wheel, and if it screws up the paper, I can try this again. But I'll try cleaning up more on the disc sander and then test it out on the strip sander. Well, I just sanded a little bit more of a curve on this wood wheel, and I found that if I use the disc sander and I set it on a little bar, that holds the angle just enough. It holds it up just enough to get a nice, very gradual bevel on it. I'm going to do the same for the wheel that I just cut. Okay, a couple things. First of all, I put everything back on, and I realized when I put this wood wheel back on, I'm like, wait a minute, it's mounted on the shaft. I can use it like a lathe, and I can just turn it on, and I have a small shaper, and I can just sand that bevel right in there. So I could fine-tune that a little. And another thing is I added a spacer here at the top because it was right up against just a small washer in between. I moved it out because it was rubbing against that wood. It seems to be running fine. There's a little bit of vibration in the back, but you can kind of see it wobbling. I don't know if that's because something's not balanced. Another thing is the adjustment screws. I think I'm going to do 2 in the back, 1 high and 1 low, and that way I can not only move that swing arm in and out, but I can angle it with the 2 bolts, because I've noticed that moving it in and out will slide the whole thing side to side on the top and bottom wheels, but moving it in and out will adjust that bottom wheel so I can get it centered on both. So I'm just going to put 2 adjustment bolts in here. I did have to add a 3rd adjustment bolt on the back. I thought I could put 1 high and 1 low and that would cover everything, but I put 2 on the back so I could pitch it and then 1 on the front, and that seemed to be to work to align everything. I don't know if it's right. There's probably a quicker way, but it's 11 o'clock at night and I just wanted to get it done. It's that time in the project where you just want to get it done. So well, I was getting near the end of the project. I was putting it all together. I finished sanding it and sealing it, and I was sanding a piece of wood, and I noticed it was chattering. It was jumping up and down on me, and I realized that the motor was spinning in the wrong direction. The sandpaper was coming up, and it was lifting the board up, and every time it hit this seam, it was jumping, and I was like, crap, I can't believe this whole time I hadn't realized the motor was spinning in the wrong direction. And I didn't want to rebuild everything. Obviously, I could have taken the motor from one side and flipped it to the other. That would have been the easy thing, and that's what I should have done from the beginning. I should have realized it spun that direction and mounted it the other way, but somehow I didn't realize it. So I looked online for all different types of ways to flip the rotation of a single-phase motor, and I'll make another video, I guess, of how I did it, but basically I had to take the coil of wires and flip it over. I couldn't flip the part that spins, I couldn't flip the capacitor, so I flipped the whole coil of wires. This part here, I flipped that over inside the case, and that worked. So if you want to see that, I'll make another video, but luckily crisis averted, it spins the right way, and I can mount it back up. Well, here's the sander. It's finally done, and some of the last things I did that I didn't record are I welded some washers on these bolts, that way I can adjust them with my hand instead of the wrench. I made a little case for a switch to turn on and off, and I didn't want a big boxy outlet box. And the dial switch, it was okay, but I left it on there in case I want to adjust the speed, but I like this quick switch up and down. And I also attached the wires so they're a little bit neater on here. But looking back, the whole goal was to make a simple, easy, cheap strip sander. It was a little harder than I thought. There were some learning curves, the motor problem. So it wasn't super simple. I think I could have made it even easier, especially when I mocked it up with some clamps and it ran. I could have started from scratch and made it a little simpler, but halfway through I knew it was something I was going to use a lot, so I spent a little more time on it. But I'll try to make some plans and measure it up if I can. I was going to try to do that 123D Catch program where I can scan it and make a CAD drawing and a Google SketchUp drawing and share it with everybody. We'll see. If I do, it'll be in the description or on my blog. But here's the sander. I've already used it a few times. I really like it. And if you're debating whether to buy one from Harbor Freight for $60 or make one, I still don't know. I like this one better than the one at the store though.